Hey everyone, I'm FireSide. And this is the first ever Fireside chat. Starting with UFC 276, Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier. What an amazing card they have put together, and what an amazing card that's in store for us to break down and to maybe, you know, pay our bills with. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I'm here to give you my sides. Follow them or not. The choice is up to you. But a very quick breakdown. I'm not going to be a statistician. I'm going to go through and break the card down through instinct. I've followed this sport my entire adult life. I've trained my entire adult life. I know a thing or two about fighting. But not everyone's 100% right on picks, so forgive me if I am wrong from time to time, or even a majority. Who really knows? But we're here to make money. We're here to find out who's the real deal, who the UFC wants to win, and who will actually win. Let's break it down, baby. First fight of the night? Maybe. Who knows? They mix it up at the end of the day on Friday night sometimes. But first fight of the night, Jessie Rose Clark versus Julia Soliarenko. Dog or pass spot. Looking at probably an over on the rounds. You're looking at two bottom tier women's fighters. Lovely fighters, both of them. They fight their ass off when they're in there. Some of them are just overmatched. But the very obvious pick is to pass on Jessie Clark in this spot and go with Julia Stoliarenko. Second fight of the night, Jessica Eye versus Macy Barber. Fresh meat for the top of the division. UFC probably wants Macy Barber to win this spot. I trust her to get the decision, maybe even the finish against Jessica Eye. But then again, who in the UFC loses 3-4 times in a row? Very rare. I don't know. I trust Macy to get it done. She is going to bring it to Jessica Eye to prove a point and to maybe, just like I said, be fresh meat for the division. Next fight up Uriah Hall, Andre Muniz. Muniz, new guy in town, just submitting. Jacare was kind of on his way out, past his prime, bless his heart, love that man. And Eric Anders is Eric Anders. So how much credit can we give Muniz? I'm not sure. I think you can give as much credit for those wins as you could with Uriah Hall beating and on his way out Anderson Silva, despite Anderson still having those hands, baby. You know how it is. And do I trust Uriah Hall to show up? I'm not sure. Maybe this is a decision, but Muniz is just tearing through these guys. Uriah Hall is older. He's slowing down. Just kind of like Anders, honestly. Kind of like Jacare was. I've said it a couple times on some comments on the web, but if Uriah Hall can't get this done and he goes out early, I just hope he doesn't go out in a shield because I can't take more broken bones with these vets. So, Andre Muniz, submission. He's going to be aggressive, stronger. He might even gas out Hall with his grappling pace. If he doesn't, Hall's going to find a shot, knock his ass out. I mean, he was caught earlier in his career, but I don't really count too much into that. But picks Andre Muniz, probably doesn't see a decision. Who knows? Maybe some crazy thing will happen and Hall pull it off. Fourth fight of the night. Brad Tavares versus DDP. Bang! Dricus Duplessis. Tavares, kind of a lifetime journeyman here, just never quite even got to gatekeeper status. DDP, just finds the chin of some guys. And, if Tavares was one of these durable guys that could weather him, that hasn't really shown to be finished, then I would maybe pick him here. But then again, he has won his past couple fights, and he is showing, he's discarding his bad tendencies, and he's really, DDP's got to be careful to not just go for the finish and gas himself out in this fight. But yeah, I'm going to pick him to get the knockout. He's just, one of these up-and-coming guys that's flashy and gets a KO, and UFC wants these guys to win. They match them up accordingly. They know what they're doing here. DDP by knockout. Most likely. On to the next one. Ian Gary versus Gabe Green. Sharps are all on Gabe Green here. I could easily see Ian Gary getting that Saul D'Amato split. Gabe Green maybe has to finish the fight to win it, or just look completely dominant, and gas out Gary with his shots. Because it was there with Weeks had him if he pushed the pace a little bit more, but a lot of that too is Gary's footwork, staying on the outside and just being really evasive. Gabe Green's a little more veteran savvy than Weeks, so yeah, maybe in Gary by a split decision. On to the next one. Donald Cerrone versus Jim Miller. Oh, this fight is so funny. It's at welterweight, of course, as most people know, and Donald Cerrone has been booked twice already. And the fight has fallen out multiple times, and they just said screw it, so they book him with Jim Miller instead. And Jim Miller will definitely show up and not cross his knee weird and, tear his ACL somehow, tripping over a wire or something. He'll show up and fight, even if he's hurt. So, Jim Miller versus Donald Cerrone. This is one, it's hard to pick until we see the weigh-in. Is Cerrone going to look like just super sucked out and weak and like he's just been drinking and just hitting pads and not really doing anything? It's shooting his movie stuff, because we know Jim Miller's training. He's a leader. He fights and leads by example, and it would be nice to see him get the knockout here. So, heart pick, Jim Miller. They're also apparently fighting over the most wins in UFC history, so that's an interesting fact. So it'd be cool to see Jim Miller come out ahead here. Company guy, good guy, not a fuckboy for other people's girlfriends. Let's go Jim Miller, knock his ass out. All right, number 7, Brad Riddell versus Jalen Turner. All over Jalen Turner here. Probably know why. He's a size bully for this division. He is just hurting people he fights. Brad Riddell was just finished in his last fight versus Fisayev, who probably has better striking all around than Turner, but he doesn't have the size for Turner, although Brad Riddell maybe knows how to break down a lengthier fighter. But man, it's hard not to imagine Riddell catching an elbow or some sort of awkward angled strike in this fight and maybe put down and anaconda out. Yeah, Jalen Turner by a finish. Maybe my favorite pick of the card, honestly. Yeah, big Jalen Turner fan. Let's get it done, baby. All right. Pedro Munoz versus hype beast Sean O'Malley. Bottom line, UFC wants Sean O'Malley to win this fight. They're booking this fight for a reason. Munoz is outsized, most likely outgunned. He was getting pieced up by the crypt keeper of Dominic Cruz and couldn't find the finish in that fight. That was pretty surprising. he had Cruz that hurt and just couldn't get it done. Especially because Cruz, of course, was pounded out by a lighter weight fighter in Henry Cejudo. Although Henry's good, you would expect someone like Munoz to really finish the job there. He couldn't get it done. Cruz and Munoz are, they're like the old guard here. Sean O'Malley set up to win and make it either be just an amazing looking decision where he's just dancing around, throwing his cool ass spinning shit and, his hands from all over the place. Munoz tries to find his range. This card's in a big cage, so these guys like Ian Gary and Sean O'Malley, Jalen Turner, maybe even Donald Cerrone, he has the size advantage. These guys can just find decisions by staying on the outside and using their better kickboxing. Not necessarily Jalen Turner over Brad Riddell, but the range in the bigger cage just have a big factor, and that does come in to effect later on in the card, of course. Next up, of course, as well, would be our 9th fight of the evening. Robbie Lawler versus Bryan Barberena. It just seems like Bryan Barberena is booked in these fights to get him some wins so that they can feed him to like their next big star that's when they come up. Because Bryan Barberena is a great fighter. He's gritty, but he's like a brawler type guy that does have holes in his game, gets caught. Robbie Lawler hasn't had power in his punches for a couple of years now. He's more of a volume striker, uses a shell guard, rolls with punches, hopes to just find a split decision victory. I don't even remember the last time he finished anybody. I can't think of it, except for his title win against Rory McDonald. So Bryan Barberena hits harder. He has a better cardio, unless Robbie has, some of that good up in his veins for this one. And yeah, Bryan Barberena by decision, but I wouldn't be surprised because all the money's on Bryan Barberena, because the line's weird that this one's just like a Sal D'Amato split for Robbie Lawler, because no one really, like, maybe the UFC does want to feed Bryan Barberena to an upcoming star with his like multiple wins in a row to make him look better over these old fighters, but they also want to give Robbie the win. So in that situation, if a ton of money's on Bryan Barberena, we'll see what happens, but the pick is for sure Bryan Barberena by most likely a decision. If he finishes Robbie, it's time for Robbie to put those gloves. Hopefully it's a good fight. I hope Robbie has a little something left for us. On to the next one. Sean Strickland, Alex Pereira, maybe the best fight on the card, in my opinion, just because new blood for the top. The top is always this rotating list of 5 fighters at middleweight, and it's just stale. But Alex has a good narrative with him knocking out Izzy in kickboxing. And Sean, of course, he's trying together a nice little resume here. He'll maybe he's going to put on his wrestling shoes for sure in the first round. He's going to get Alex tired, and he can pull away in this fight. Don't be surprised. Would anyone be surprised if Sean caught one in the first or maybe even the early second round? Nope. Sorry there. I'm a husky, there's hair in my mouth. But Sean Strickland, he's my pick just because he's the veteran MMA fighter. He's better in more areas than Alex Pereira, although Alex Pereira's skill striking is, of course, probably twice as good just because of his utilization of his kicks to set up those brutal hands he has. So Sean Strickland, that could really be his demise in this fight, would be some of those kicks, because I see him evading punches really well, but he just he's good with range. So who knows? I think he can cut off Alex Pereira in the cage, who is still not necessarily experienced enough. But then again, this is the big cage, so should we be surprised if Pereira just even wins a boring stay on the outside, use his length to win this fight, and just really be passive? I mean, maybe he knows Strickland's dangerous, so we'll see. I like Strickland more. Put on your wrestling shoes, buddy. Gas this guy out. He was very tired against Bruno Silva in the third round. And Bruno Silva might have heavier hands than Sean Strickland, but Sean Strickland is a higher fight IQ. Much higher fight IQ. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I love the fight. On to the next one. Volk versus Max Holloway 3. I don't like it just because obviously it's a third fight. And the same guy's already won twice and will most likely win a third time. Max just got beat up a little bit by Yair. He did find some takedowns in that fight, which was kind of surprising. They saved him. I felt he was kind of getting pieced up towards the end. So that fight was really interesting. Yair really brought it. He surprised me a lot. But Max, being Max, is one of the greats. He got it done. He pulled out the decision. He obviously won that fight. And he's just fighting a guy that, he had a tough fight in Ortega. I don't know how beat up he got against Ortega. Probably a little sore the next day. But, unlike the Yair fight, which was a war, where Volkanovski, he just had a cakewalk against Korean Zombie. So, obvious pick here is Volk, maybe even by finish late, or even early. Who knows? Maybe just by finish flat out. Don't really look for the late finish because Max, you got to remember, even when he was fighting Jose Aldo, who, wouldn't you know, was a natural bantamweight the entire time, did catch Holloway hard, and Volk's been bombing guys lately since those fights, and Max can't quite pull the trigger off because Volk has his kick timing down when he tries to get his boxing combos off. So we'll see how it goes, but Volk, very obvious pick, maybe even by finish. Sorry, Max, I picked you in the second fight. At first I thought you won it, but on rewatch you lost the last 3 rounds. It was a great fight, but Volk is the pick. And the main event is Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier. Oh, Jared Cannonier. The power of Captain Planet compels you to walk through Israel Adesanya's pitter-patter and force this guy to fight. That is the only way he is going to win. He's just got to be made of steel here. I mean, he does have the heavy frame coming down from the higher weight. I mean, Jan, his power did bother Adesanya. It hurt him. Commentary didn't talk about it too much. They hyped Adesanya up for a lot of that fight. But Jan was landing hard on him, had him tentative, and then took him down off of it. And while Cannonier does not use takedowns much, that might be his path to victory. A similar fight to that, but he definitely has to wade through Adesanya and find his moments. He's going to be a moment guy in this fight, and he finds his moments. He found it against Whitaker late, and he had a broken arm for what seemed like most of that fight from what he was telling us, which means people picking Israel Adesanya by any form of knockout are going to be really most likely disappointed because he's most likely to win. It's going to be a decision. Jared Cannonier is very tough to finish. Whitaker landed flush head kick on this guy and couldn't quite get him out of there. He still came back and managed to hurt him. So Adrian Adesanya, straight pick, most likely by decision. Probably similar to the Yoel Romero fight. Cannonier maybe getting hurt early and afraid to pull the trigger, but he can't if he wants to win. And he's been building his entire career to this. Yoel Romero had already been there a few times. He hadn't experienced it. So don't be surprised, guys, if Cannonier pulls out an upset in this fight, maybe even a Sal Diamato split decision. So there's your picks up and down the card. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. And maybe it's the start of something good. Let me know what you guys think. Of course, like, subscribe, hit your alerts, and I'll see you next time on the Fireside Chat.